It's 1:53 a.m., August 9th, 2013. A man named Brandon Lawson is on the phone with 911, breathless, panicked, and trying to make sense of something he's seeing on the side of a rural Texas highway. His voice trembles as he says that he's in a field, that someone is chasing him, that there are cars parked on both sides of the road. And then, silence. Minutes later, police find his truck, still running, sitting on the shoulder of Highway 277 near Bronte. The driver's door is unlocked. There's no sign of a struggle and no sign of Brandon. In the decades since that night, his 911 call has become one of the most picked apart recordings on the internet. Podcasts, Reddit threads, YouTube videos. Everyone has tried to decode what really happened out there. But before we get to the theories, we need to rewind to the hours leading up to that call. Because this isn't just a mystery about a phone line cutting out. It's about a young dad, a family fight, and one dark stretch of road that changed everything. Brandon Lawson was 26 years old, a father of 4, living in San Angelo, Texas. He worked in the oil fields, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day, under the kind of sun that just doesn't quit. You know that heat where your clothes stick to you before you've even had breakfast? Yeah, that was his every day. The pay was decent, but it came at a price. Sore muscles, sleepless nights, and a brain running on caffeine and fumes. Still, Brandon kept showing up because that's who he was. The I'll figure it out type. The guy who would hand you his last cigarette, fix your flat tire, and still apologize for being late. Friends said he was loyal, funny, the kind of person who always cracked a joke right when everyone else wanted to complain. He was a little stubborn, a little proud, but always trying to do right by the people that he loved. Home, it was Brandon, his longtime girlfriend Ladessa Lofton, and their 4 kids, which meant the house was never quiet, ever. Between diapers, bills, and a rotating playlist of crying, cartoons, and chaos, peace and quiet weren't really on the menu. They'd been together since high school, which sounds sweet until you remember what high school sweethearts looks like 10 years later. 2 sleep-deprived adults arguing about who forgot to buy milk again. They loved each other, sure, but life was heavy. Ladessa handled most of the day-to-day while Brandon worked back-to-back shifts. They barely had time to breathe, let alone reconnect. Still, there was this sense that they were almost there. Brandon had just landed a new job that paid a little better. He was talking about catching up on bills, maybe fixing the truck, maybe, finally, taking a weekend to just breathe. Things were looking up. For once. On the night of August 8th, 2013, Brandon came home late. He was exhausted, the kind of tired that sits behind your eyes and makes everything feel heavier than it should. Ladessa was home with the kids. The house was finally quiet, a rare moment of peace after a long day. The TV was still on in the other room, casting that blue flicker across the walls. And then, an argument. We don't exactly know what it was about. Probably something small that got caught in the crossfire of stress and exhaustion. Maybe it was bills. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was just one of those nights where both people are running on empty and one small spark turns into a fire. Voices rose. Words got sharp. The kind of fight where you both know you're saying things that you don't mean, but you say them anyways. Ladessa told him to calm down. Brandon told her he needed air. Eventually, he grabbed his phone, his wallet, his keys, the essentials, and said he was heading to his dad's place in Crowley, about 3 hours away. He probably thought he just needed to cool off. A long drive, a night to breathe, and he'd come back in the morning when things didn't feel so heavy. It's one of those moments that you look back on later and wish you could pause, stop the clock before everything changes. But no one knows that when they're living it. It's dark out. That quiet kind of dark you only get in the middle of nowhere. No city glow, no street lights, just a black sky and a 2-lane road that goes on forever. Brandon is still wound up, tired, angry, maybe a little impulsive. You know that feeling when you're mad, but mostly just exhausted from being mad? That's where he's at. He leaves home around 11:54 p.m, throws his stuff in the truck, doesn't say much else. That is the last time Ledessa sees him. 40 minutes later, somewhere along Highway 277 near the small town of Bronte, Brandon's truck runs out of gas. It's one of those long empty stretches of highway, no houses, no lights, no real reason to stop unless you have to. He pulls over onto the shoulder. The engine sputters once, twice, and dies. He checks his phone. There's a couple bars of service, just enough. So he calls his younger brother, Kyle. Kyle's at home with his girlfriend, Audrey, and their baby. Brandon tells him he's out of fuel. Nothing dramatic, just a quick, "Hey man, can you bring me some gas?" Kyle says, "Yeah, hang tight, I'll grab a jerry can and be there soon." It's about a 45-minute drive, but by the time Kyle gets there, the situation will be nothing like he expects. It's about a 45-minute drive from Kyle's house to where Brandon broke down, and in that time, the calls just kept coming. At first, Brandon sounds normal, frustrated, annoyed, like anyone would be if their truck decided to die on them in the middle of nowhere, but then something shifts. His voice starts to shake. He's out of breath. The words come faster, like he's moving while he's talking. What starts as frustration turns into a full-blown panic. He tells Kyle there are people after him. He says someone is chasing him. Kyle is confused. Like, what? He's picturing his brother on the side of some quiet road, completely alone. Then Brandon calls again. This time saying he's bleeding. He says he's in a field in the dark at 1 a.m. in rural Texas. Kyle is trying to piece it together, but none of it makes any sense. He's asking, "Where are you? Who's chasing you?" But Brandon keeps talking over him. Bits of static, short bursts of sound. Sometimes his voice fades out completely, like he's walking in and out of signal. Kyle starts to think maybe Brandon is just paranoid or hallucinating. He knows his brother had used meth earlier that day, trying to stay awake through long oil field shifts. It wasn't unusual for guys in that line of work, but it could definitely mess with your head. Still, even if he was high, the fear in his voice is real. And that is the part that Kyle can't shake. Because whatever was happening out there, Brandon sounded genuinely terrified. And then the call that's haunted people for over 10 years. It's 1:53 in the morning when Brandon dials 911. The dispatcher answers, and right away you can hear it. His words don't flow right. It's like he's trying to describe too much, too fast, all at once. The audio is grainy, hard to follow. That weird mix of wind, panic, and bad cell service that makes it sound almost otherworldly. I'm going to insert the recording, but I'm also going to read a transcript that I found as well, so we can compare them together.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing guys over.
Yes, I'm in the middle of a field. Pulled some guys over.
Right here going towards Abilene on both sides.
We're right here, going towards Abilene on both sides.
My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here and got taken to the woods. Please hurry.
My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. The guy's chasing me through the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
The call lasts for 43 seconds. 43 seconds that have been replayed, slowed down, filtered, and obsessed over ever since. The dispatcher asks where he is. Brandon repeats something about being in a field. Then, the line just cuts off. That was the last time anyone outside of his family ever heard his voice. And to this day, no one agrees on what he really said. Was it pulled some guys over or ran into them? Was he describing people chasing him or something else entirely? Minutes later, Kyle and his girlfriend Audrey pull up near the spot. The highway is almost pitch black. No street lights, no sound except crickets and the hum of their truck engine. Up ahead, they see it. Brandon's silver F-150 pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking into the dark. It's the only movement for miles. They park behind it and get out. The driver's door is unlocked. The truck is empty. No sign of Brandon. Just his hat, his phone charger, and that eerie stillness that makes your stomach twist. Then, by total coincidence, a sheriff drives by. Kyle waves him down, explaining that his brother ran out of gas and might have wandered off somewhere nearby. The officer grabs his flashlight and sweeps it over the field beside the highway. It's just tall grass and the sound of the wind. Nothing else. They honk the horn a few times, hoping he's close enough to hear. They yell his name over and over into the dark. Nothing. Not even a rustle. Kyle tries calling again. One call actually connects. He hears rustling, like someone walking quickly through the brush. There's wind, footsteps, then Brandon's voice, low and breathless, whispering something that sounds like, "I'm 10 minutes up the road." And then, nothing. Kyle drives up and down that stretch of road, scanning the ditches with a flashlight. But there's no movement, no shadow, no sign of anyone walking ahead, just the sound of tires on gravel and that same cold, empty stretch of highway. Somewhere in that darkness, Brandon Lawson is gone. By sunrise, the truck is still there. The highway looks different in daylight, less like a crime scene, more like a place that could swallow a secret whole. Brandon's phone has gone dark. His wallet, his keys, and the gas can he was supposed to fill, all missing. Deputies comb through the area, checking every ditch and patch of bush. Nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, no sign of a struggle. Just an empty truck and the sound of morning traffic slowly coming back to life. And that's it. That's where the trail ends. No one sees him walk away. No one reports hearing anything strange. For the next 9 years, Brandon Lawson is simply gone. So let's pause here, because this is where things start to get really weird. A man calls 911 saying he's being chased. His truck is found abandoned, but there's no sign of him. Not even footprints. And for years, people couldn't even agree on what they were hearing in that 911 call. Was Brandon high and hallucinating? Or was he genuinely in danger, running from someone who never wanted to be found? That 43-second phone call became the centerpiece of this entire case. People slowed it down, filtered it, argued over every word, trying to make sense of what Brandon was saying. And that's what makes this case so fascinating, because everyone is working from the same evidence, but nobody seems to hear the same story. So in this next part, let's break it down. What investigators found, what his family believes, and what the internet got completely wrong. The 911 call is the center of everything. It's 43 seconds of audio that people have analyzed for over a decade. Slowed down, reversed, cleaned up, argued about, and still, somehow, nobody agrees on what he actually said. The official transcript says Brandon told the dispatcher, "Pulled some guys over. We're right here, going towards Abilene on both sides." But here's the problem. That recording is rough. like Nokia in a wind tunnel rough. It's so grainy that everyone hears something different. Some people swear he said, "I ran into them." Others think it's, "There's a guy chasing me into the woods." And that one line has fueled 10 years of internet chaos. Because think about it. Why would Brandon, a guy who is not a cop, by the way, say he pulled someone over? Was he trying to explain that someone else got pulled over? Or was it just a bad signal? A few words distorted into something that sounds way more mysterious than it really was. It's the kind of audio where you can convince yourself you're hearing whatever fits your theory. You can play it 5 times in a row and get 5 different versions. And once you start listening for danger, you'll start to hear it. Brandon's brother later confirmed he'd taken meth earlier that day. And yes, that does sound shocking at first, but apparently in the oil fields it wasn't rare. Guys were working 14-hour days, sometimes longer, in brutal heat, trying to stay awake and make their quota. Meth wasn't seen as a party drug out there, it was a survival one. The problem? It wrecks your system. It can cause paranoia, confusion, hallucinations, especially if you've been awake for days on end. So one theory is that Brandon was hallucinating, that there weren't any guys in the field, no one chasing him, just a terrified man in the dark, convinced danger was real. But here's the problem. Even if Brandon was paranoid, where did he go? Search teams combed that stretch of Highway 277 for days. Volunteers, dogs, deputies, nothing. No tracks, no scent, no body. You don't just vanish into thin air, even in Texas. When the deputy arrived around 2 a.m., he didn't see signs of distress. The truck looked like any other breakdown. No blood, no obvious damage, no wallet tossed on the ground. So he assumed that Brandon had walked off to get help. They towed the truck, filled out the paperwork, and that was that. Stranded motorist. Case closed. It wasn't until later that morning that anyone realized he was actually missing, which feels kind of important. Then there's the darker theory that Brandon stumbled into something criminal. Highway 277 runs through isolated land, oil access roads, truck routes, and according to locals, more than a few sketchy detours. Some believe that Brandon saw something he shouldn't have, maybe a drug deal, maybe a drop, and that the guys in the field were real. It's not impossible, but there's also no physical evidence of a struggle. No tire marks, no footprints leading away from the truck, no sign of violence. Just a 911 call and a man who disappeared. Phone records later showed Brian's last ping about 3 miles south of where his truck was found, near the Colorado River. That area was rough terrain, thick brush, uneven ground, and parts of it fenced off by private property. It wasn't fully searched for years, and that's where everything stayed. Unsolved, unanswered, until 2022. For 9 years, Brandon's family never stopped searching. They organized search parties, put up flyers, called every lead, no matter how small. And every year that passed, the questions just got louder. Then, in February 2022, almost 9 years to the day, a private search team found clothing and human remains near the Colorado River, just 3 miles from where his truck had been found. DNA confirmed what they feared. The remains belonged to Brandon Lawson. Ledessa posted on Facebook, "After 9 years of waiting and praying, Brandon has been found. This isn't the ending we wanted, but we're grateful to bring him home." After almost a decade of not knowing, they finally had an answer, even if it wasn't the one that they'd hoped for. The official cause of death remains undetermined. There was no clear evidence of foul play, no obvious signs of injury, Just the unanswered questions that's haunted this case from the start. What really happened in those final minutes? Even after the discovery, the questions haven't stopped. How did Brandon end up miles away from his truck? Why did he sound like he was being chased? And why did it take 9 years to find him when he wasn't really that far? His 911 call spread everywhere. Dissected, slowed down, filtered, turned into memes and theories. Everyone wanted to decode it. But behind all of that noise was a real person, a dad, a partner, terrified and alone, trying to get help. Maybe closure isn't about answers. Maybe it's just knowing that someone you love isn't out there suffering anymore. Because sometimes the ending doesn't fix what's broken. It just lets you stop wondering. Brandon's story reminds us that the internet loves a mystery, but his family loved a person. And that is what we need to remember. Thank you so much for spending time with this story tonight. If you would like to keep going down the rabbit hole, my deep dive on the Maura Murray mystery is also on this channel. It's very similar. I also have plenty of other videos on different cases, different types of cases, spooky stories, all things like that. So if you did enjoy, do hit subscribe and come hang out next time. I do also have a Discord that will be linked in the description if you wanted to come join, come hang out, come say hey, have a chat, why not? I'll also link all of my socials if you just can't get enough of me. Stay safe out there. I love you. Bye!